So today I want to introduce you to the concept of swinging on the spiral as opposed to swinging on the pendulum, as a lot of people do. Most people in the matrix world swing on a bit of a pendulum as opposed to swinging on a spiral, and this is a concept that we're going to explore today. So a pendulum looks like this. I mean, everyone's seen a pendulum. A pendulum swings this way, back and forth. And most people are living on one side of the pendulum most of the time, and then the rest of the time they're living on another side of the pendulum, and very rarely finding this bit in the middle, which we'll call peace. And if you look at some of the ancient sort of Eastern philosophies like Buddhism and Taoism and things like that, they're always looking for peace. They're always looking for that middle ground, and anything one way or the other is deemed, it's just deemed moving away from the source and the purpose of life. So what a lot of people do is they're on this side of the equation. They might be having a bit of a bad day or something, and then they'll come towards peace, and for some reason, well, because of the matrix, they perceive peace to be somewhat maybe boring. And even if that's not the case, even if they don't, what generally happens is people are always distracted. On one side or the other is generally a distraction. So what they'll do is they're coming towards peace, and then they'll glimpse it. They're like, hey, look, there's peace. But then they look and they're like, oh my God, there's a squirrel. And they chase that. And then they're like so happy and everything's awesome and everything's la-di-da. But when people try to share that with me, I'm always happy for them, but I'm generally just happy in this part. And there's a part of me that's just observing, and they wonder why I'm not so along with them with their happiness. And mostly it's because, you know, I'm outside of the matrix and I'm observing, and it's just amusing to me. It's not like I'm not really going along with that excitement. But the other part is that there's just a part of me that's just ever so slightly wincing in preparation for the point where they smack their head into the brick wall of the matrix and then suddenly swing back to this side, and then I've got to listen to them whinge about stuff and whatever on this side. So this is the boo-hoo side. This is the why me, why does this happen, what about, you know, just comparing yourselves to other people. And on this side, anytime you're using terms like oh my God and so with more than two O's, like several O's, I'm so happy, it's generally not a real happiness. It's generally a matrix happiness. And it's a distraction. It's actually a distraction from the core of life. And I talk when I'm speaking with clients about the concept that I didn't make it up, I guess, but it's just what I call chasing rainbows. And there's a reason that life gives us a dark side. There's a reason why if we're living too much in the matrix, our soul will deliver us something such as, it could be a cancer, it could be a debilitating disease, a debilitating injury, and it's generally a way for our soul to shock us. Because our souls, generally when we're on this side, our soul's tapping us gently on the shoulder, trying to bring us back into the equilibrium of peace here. But a lot of us, because we're so distracted by the matrix, we don't notice those subtle taps. So then we get cracked over the head with cancer or a car crash or something that is trying to bring us back and give us a message to bring us into alignment with perhaps our life purpose and get us away from these two extremes of the spectrum. So the reason I wanted to bring up swing rather than swinging on the pendulum is the concept of swinging on a spiral. And this actually comes from a Tool song, Lateralus. I really recommend people have a listen to that song. And also, I mean, the words, the guy, I mean, I play music, and one of the reasons I say to my friend that I find it so hard to write lyrics to songs is because the guy who sings for Tool and A Perfect Circle and Pussifer, he's written everything that I'd ever want to write. So I'll kind of, it's one of those things where I struggle to come up with words because he's written them all. But the idea of a spiral is that a spiral represents insight and it represents growth. And for the same reason that I don't agree with monetary systems and a lot of business principles is that people always talk about moving forward. Got to move forward, got to move ahead, got to push forward. But nothing in nature, there's no constant gradient in nature. Trees grow constantly upwards, but eventually they die and they recycle, and everything in nature has cycles. So trying to attach ourselves to some sort of imaginary upward trend is only ever going to bring disharmony to our lives. So the concept of, I guess, moving forward is a little bit, it's definitely a matrix concept. A spiral, though, represents just growth and growth of the consciousness. That's what a spiral represents. It's always expanding. So we're never moving forward. We're trying to grow and expand our consciousness. just something on Tool actually with that song, if you have a listen to it. When people sometimes listen to this sort of music, because they've grown up listening to Matrix music and things that are just set in such a rhythmical... The thing with 4/4 time, for example, is getting a little bit off topic, but 4/4 time, in the way a lot of radio music, that's it gets into the nervous system and it programs the nervous system a certain way. So when people talk about brain control and mind control and the government trying to do this and that, I mean, some of it has a lot of validity, but a lot of the way that the Matrix tries to condition you is through music. And people don't have an attention span to listen to a 9.5-minute song because they're used to 3-minute songs or 2-minute songs on the radio, and always in the same time signature. And when people are trying to listen to a song like Lateralus that has a lot of polyrhythms and things going on, sometimes their ears just can't pick up on what's happening. Their brain just hears noise. But once they get to understand more about music, and then you can see the realization on their face, and it's like this dawning of awesomeness that comes across their face, and it's really quite nice to see. So the way this relates into the Matrix is, if you've ever heard the story of Plato's cave, and this is what happens is when people are in these states, and I'm just my peaceful self observing and just being present and being with them, it's because I'm out of it. I'm out of the Matrix, and I'm basically looking in, and it's observing, and it's so obvious to me where people are, I guess, spending where their energy is. And it's not that they're spending their energy in the wrong places, it's that they're distracted by the Matrix, and the Matrix is actually tapping their energy. Obviously, I'm going to go into this deeper in some other videos, but for the purpose of keeping this one as brief as I can, we're just doing the spiral versus the pendulum. So, when people ask if I'm happy, this is the concept of I am and non-reaction, and it's just when some people have actually suggested that I'm kind of missing out, I guess, I forget the way some people would put it, but just basically along the lines of I'm missing out on certain experiences of life because I'm not experiencing these hardships that they go through and the drama of relationships and the happiness. But these experiences are Matrix experiences, like from being outside of it and just observing and looking in, they're living in, I guess, something they're experiencing here, and the rest, everything reality out here is where, I guess, I'm spending a lot of time. And for me to just look into that little bulb in the middle, that's why it's so amusing for me, and it's just... Which brings me to the I am. So when somebody says, I'm happy, I'm this, I'm that, I'm sad, I'm whatever, it's disconnecting from the core of yourself. There's no need to say I'm happy because I just am. And I get excited, I get a little bit, not depressed, but I can have low days where I'm low in energy, and I have days where I'm super excited. Like if I've gone to a Tool concert like I did this year, you can't wipe the smile off my face, and I'm beaming and I'm buzzing around. But I'm also aware of what's going on. So the I am is just your core state. So if you were to, say, come across a being from another part of the universe that was a whole number of levels above you and me, and if you said to them something like, oh, I love myself, or I'm really confident, I'm really unconfident, I'm really happy, I'm really whatever, they'd just sort of be looking at you like just, what are you talking about? Well, they know what you're talking about, but they'd just be smiling in amusement because they're living in an area outside of the area that's already outside of the Matrix. It's just a whole nother realm, and it's a whole other place where we can tap into that as well. But because we're so distracted a lot of time by the Matrix, a lot of people miss out on this part of life. So rather than me having to say, yeah, I'm happy or whatever, it's just sort of like, it's just sort of like, it's a state of being. It's just an I am. I don't have to express I am this or that. It's just I am. So to wrap up the pendulum, if we're always swinging on a pendulum, at some point or another it has to swing back to the other way. It's just how a pendulum works, as opposed to a spiral, which you could actually draw. If I wanted to draw this in an illustrative way, a spiral can be represented inside the realm of peace. And then when you're peaceful, that can just keep expanding. And that'll represent the growth of consciousness in a peaceful state. So what we have here, I think you can just see it in frame. We have reality down here. So this is all Matrix and it's all distraction, either side. When we finally get down to the point where we might actually stay for 1 minute in peace. Here we can see there's this gap, and it's a very small gap. It's a very small gap where you can see just a bit of a light through the end of a tunnel, and on the other side of that is reality. So this is how you're going to get out of this little matrix world with all the little things that you think are important in life and you're attached to, and your emotions and your beliefs, and outside of this little matrix world. And I'll actually do some videos on other dimensions for you, how to, I guess, understand it in a way that I teach it to people. And then you'll start to get into this other realm here. Once you're out of it, it's like, it's limitless. You can have a limitless life in any way you can dream or desire, if you can just find your way out of the matrix. So when you can find the peace, you're never going to see this gap on either side. You're only going to find it when you find peace. It's a little small gap, and then you'll see reality, and it'll blow your mind, and then you'll wonder what you've been doing. And then you'll understand why sometimes I have a bit of a blank expression when people talk about a lot of this sort of stuff. It's because I'm just observing this little small gap from a space that's way outside the lines, as is spoken about in that Tool song. So I recommend you have a look at that. I hope that explains to you the difference between swinging on a pendulum as opposed to swinging on a spiral. And I encourage you to, I guess, find a way to understand the concept of the spiral and see how you can start to have that enter into your life, as opposed to just, at least if you can notice the fact that there's a pendulum effect in your life, which is generally driven by the same demons and the same shadows, is what will have one person swing from one end to the other. Whether they're happy or they're sad, it's basically being driven by the same thing, the same part of the ego, the same shadow persona. So it's just becoming aware. Once you become aware of that, you can start to find more of the peace in the middle, which I guess is something that most people are striving for in this life, is that peace, regardless of whether you have a husband, a wife, a boyfriend, a girlfriend, but regardless of whether you have kids because you're infertile, regardless of whether you have a lot of money or you don't have a lot of money, regardless if you're fat or thin, or you're a world champion in a sport, or you're an uncoordinated thingo. Can't think of a word to finish that one off. But you get where I'm going. Irrespective of your place in life, remember that the matrix leads you to believe that you need to be something, whereas the I am is, it's always perfect, it's always enough. God doesn't make mistakes. Whatever you are, whoever you are, wherever you're at in this stage of life, it's just perfect. And if you can find that peace, that whoever you are and whatever you are, it's enough. It's enough. It's always enough. You don't have to be anything more than that, and you can find the peace. I guarantee you'll have a pretty good day there, and you don't need to be here or there. You'll just sit here and you'll be having a really good day. So that'll do for today. Hope you enjoyed it. If you want to share that with someone else, feel free to send it along, and I'll catch you in the next video.